Well, hello there, amazing business owners. Welcome back to another episode of Business Straight Up, the podcast for creatives and business owners who want to actually make a living doing what they love, because the cliche of the starving artist can suck it, right? I am so excited for today's episode. I have the amazing Rachel Brenke on the podcast today. She is a lawyer, a photographer, a business owner. She has all of these amazing titles, as well as the ever awesome title of mom. She runs several businesses successfully and has so much to share with us when it comes to outsourcing, as well as contracts and tips for business owners who might be struggling. So if that is you, please buckle up for an amazing episode today, because Rachel has some amazing insight to share and to impart on anyone who might be facing some challenges. So as always, if you love this episode, would you mind heading on over to iTunes and leaving a review? I know it takes a few minutes, but if you want, you can hit pause right now. Ready? Hit pause. And we're back. Did you leave the review? I hope so. I so appreciate these reviews. It helps me know what I can help you with, how I can better serve you, and it helps me get amazing guests too. So if you wouldn't mind, head on over to iTunes, leave a review. And I so appreciate you and thank you in advance for that. Let's chat with Rachel, shall we? Let's jump in. Hey there, awesome people. I am Brooke Summer, and you are listening to Business Straight Up, the podcast for creative entrepreneurs to learn, connect, grow, and build the business and life that they dream of. Welcome, let's get going and dive right in. Welcome back, awesome business owners. I know I say this a lot, but I am truly excited to bring you today's episode. Today, I have the honor to spend time with the ever amazing Rachel Brenke, who is a multifaceted entrepreneur who has created businesses from the ground up that support the life she wants to lead. And can I just tell you on a personal note that Rachel's resources are amazing. I always check her site first if there's a contract or something that I need. I actually logged in today and saw that my first purchase was back in 2016. So I have used Rachel's contracts with my team, my clients, my students. They are solid. They're so easy to download and implement. And I will stop talking now and just say welcome to our amazing guest, Rachel Brenke. Thank you for being here, Rachel.
Of course. Thanks for having me. I always love being on the other side of the mic and not being the host. So this is fun.
Right? It's kind of fun to sit back and not have like all the prep work and the editing and everything else too, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. You're singing my song.
So Rachel, tell me a little more about your journey. I can imagine it was a little crazy with like law school and then art, because they're two different worlds. And when they kind of mix, what has brought you to where you're at now?
Yeah. So what's interesting is that my entrepreneurship journey started with an online apparel store. We're thinking like MySpace with the autoplay music and glitter coding that you can do. I know I'm dating myself. But when I was going through the process of wanting to have my own business, I was still in school. I had our oldest son. We have 5 now. And I had just found out I was diagnosed with cancer. And I was like, you know what? If I make it through it, which I obviously did, but I was like, if I'm going to make it through this, I don't want to live my life patting the pockets of someone else and filling someone else's dreams. And I kind of already knew that before. I never fit into the box. Even now, like if you check out my social media, I am an attorney, but you're not going to see suits. You're going to see like nose ring, ripped jeans, and like crazy stuff. But so I did the online apparel store, and during that process, this was before we had like all this freemium information. Podcasting wasn't a legit thing. Blogging was even hardly a thing. It was really only like personal blogs. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to set out to figure this out on my own. And as I did, I realized I want other women primarily, but other people, women, maybe specifically moms like me, to have the same thing, to be able to have a piece of the entrepreneurship pie and also be with their families or whatever it is that you want your life to be. And that sounds so cliche, but you know what? It is the truth. It's what I'm living and what I set out to do. And so I went through multiple businesses and I've grown them. A lot of fun. I much enjoy it in different industries. But during the process, I did end up going to get my MBA because I thought, well, to be a successful business owner, you have to have your MBA. Spoiler alert, no, you don't. Save your money. No,
Right?
you don't. And then I went to law school. Now, law school was a little bit different. I was still kind of struggling between this success on the entrepreneurship side, but wanting to do good in the world. Like in my mind at the time, it was, well, I can't go into a for-profit business and do good in the world. I mean, like that's how limited my view was. And so when I went to law school, the intention was actually just to keep growing my businesses, to financially support us so that I could have money on the side and then work as a prosecutor. I wanted to prosecute child sex crimes specifically.
Yeah.
And by the time I graduated law school, I was on baby 2 and 3, and then had 2 more after. It just was not financially feasible then for me to even go work as a prosecutor, which I kind of find to be a little bit of a blessing because it forced me kind of back into entrepreneurship. And I still had the businesses, but they were more of a side hustle at the time. And I just went full hog on it. And it has grown from there. And I just recently, within the last few years, realized I am doing good, even though I'm making money from it. Not that I have an issue with making money, but it was that whole wrestling of how can I impact the world? And it goes back to exactly why I even started it to begin with, is that I wanted to impact other lives so they could have the lives that they want to. And that is basically the mission statement for every single one of my businesses. And here we are.
I think that sometimes it's hard. I know for me to accept that even with small things, you are impacting the world because we think that we have to sweep in and make these like huge sweeping changes to someone's life. And the reality is that these little small things can really impact someone's life, which then impacts other people. And it's kind of the ripple effect, right?
Yeah. And, I see that a lot when I work with, because I also do business consulting and I work with clients or even just friends that are entrepreneurs. And they're like, I don't have a story like you. I didn't have cancer. I don't have lung disease. I don't have 5 kids. And I'm like, hold up, Sally. You just need one thing. And it doesn't have to be like this obscure story. You're going to connect with people because there's plenty of people who don't connect with me on all these levels, maybe only 1 or 2 of them, if that. Like there is someone for everyone. Put the story out there. And like you said, you can make a small impact that can be in a big way.
Yes. And those little things what if someone just takes one of your suggestions from your consulting and that means that they get to stay home with their kids?
100%.
That now means that if their kid is sick at school, mom can pick them up instead of them having to sit in the nurse's office all day. That's a big impact from a little thing.
Well, and we're seeing that right now. We're recording this during pandemic, which who knows, we could be sitting here in another year, hopefully not.
Oh my gosh.
With it. But we're seeing the fruits of that. All those that have been putting in the elbow grease prior to pandemic, getting either their side hustle or getting ready to move into entrepreneurship. A lot of them were thrust into this or the foundation was already there. So like for me, I'm very grateful that this year wasn't that immense of a physical or financial change for our family as far as with the kids learning from home, because I already work from home.
Yes, I have told my husband several times that there are so many things that have happened to us in the last 3 or 4 years that were crazy difficult to go through, like my son's school problems. But going through those has meant in this pandemic that we know what to do. We're okay. And it's such a blessing.
Well, I look back and I sit here and say, well, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Here's my story. Well, I didn't build it all at once. But what I do love, and it keeps coming in my mind this year during pandemic, and I also have my own personal stuff. I mentioned I have lung disease. So like there's a whole lot of things going on, is that I am now, quote unquote, cashing in on the dividends. And I don't mean necessarily financially, but I can emotionally be here. I can physically be here for my children, still getting relatively, obviously I'm not traveling, so I'm not speaking or competing like I normally do, but I'm still able to do the things that I want. And that's because I put in all the years and I'm now cashing in the dividends.
Yes. And I think it's so important to note as well. I just taught my marketing class and I told my students, this is a long game. This is not an overnight thing. And so many people want to pretend that it is, and it's bullshit. And so many of them said, I'm so glad you said that because I feel like I'm failing when I don't see, huge financial success in a month. It takes time.
It does take time. Well, and and I'm glad that you brought that up, because one of the big things that we have been working on, we being my teams of all the different businesses, this year's well, we were kind of forced into it between pandemic and just personal stuff. But our entire mission has been to simplify, like internal mission, so that it's less complex, because almost all those that work for me are primarily moms. So they're having to do virtual learning from home as well. And I knew I didn't want to add a burden. So we were like, simplify, simplify. And I think oftentimes as entrepreneurs, we have a tendency to overcomplicate things anyways.
Yes.
And to what you were just saying, for those that are starting out in their entrepreneurship journey, or, and I'm going to be transparent about this, if you're one, I'm one of them, I'm raising my hand, you just can't see me, I can fall victim to the fear, especially knowing that so many of my team members financially rely upon me and such. You could be like, oh, I have to offer everything to everyone.
Yes.
And it just overcomplicates and serves no one, especially you.
Yes. And that also plays into something I know I have talked about a lot on this podcast is perfectionism, feeling like you have to know everything and offer everything, and it has to be perfect before you put it out there.
I saw on the other day, I think it was on Twitter, somebody said the smartest people say, I don't know, when they don't know.
Yes, absolutely. It's something that I'm okay with saying, but I just like, there's this little voice in the back of my head of it has to be perfect. It has to be perfect. And so this year has been the year of progress over perfection, because moving forward is a hell of a lot better than sitting where you're at, even if it's imperfect.
I was just ranting, Rachel's rant, that's how I like to call it, but it's from a good place. Like, it's me just being like, I got to get this out there. Y'all need to hear this, because I see y'all doing this to yourselves. But imperfect, what was the quote I put out? It was imperfect progress over perfect procrastination, and I fell victim to this as being kind of in the creative world. I get very self-conscious about my visual brand. Well, that's not my strength, but I was finding that I wasn't posting and putting out the knowledge because I didn't have the perfect Instagram photo. My graphic was not exactly what I wanted it to be. And you can look up and go, 6 months have passed and I'm not any further along in my business because all of it's sitting in my Planoly or whatever it is you use, and you didn't publish it.
Yep. Oh my gosh, that's so true. We have all these ideas and all of these things that we want to do, and then we don't do anything with them. For what? Then they just sit there. Then you're not helping anyone. You're not impacting anyone. And for photographers or artists, or even the creatives that are like makeup artists and stuff like that, when you work with someone, you are impacting the way that they see themselves. And if you are holding back on that, you're not only holding back on yourself and your own business, but on how you can help them.
One of the things that I've enjoyed seeing, which I still battle as a photographer myself and being in front of creatives, but one of the things that I have seen over the course of my entrepreneurship journey is that social media has allowed for more imperfect. In fact, your highest engagement is on probably your most imperfect photo, because it's all about content versus how polished and perfect it is.
Yes. And people want to see someone they can relate to. Right? Someone always looks perfect. Well, I sure as hell can't relate to that. So,
let me tell you what, the other day I was like, I told myself I'm going to commit to video, right? That's what I was kind of referring to when I said that I've been paralyzed by it. And I was like, you know what? Screw it. I'm just going to get in front of the Instagram stories. My hair's a mess, whatever. Girlfriend, I didn't realize I had acne patches. Yes, I'm 36 and have acne. I had acne patches on my face. And then I had done like 8 videos on Instagram stories. When I got to the end, normal me, like old me, would have been like, delete it all. I was just like, fuck it, just leave it. And nobody even cared. In fact, I had people message me. They were like, I love it. I love that you were authentic and didn't polish it up. I'm like, well, good, because I wasn't re-recording it. But.
Right? It's so funny that we will stop ourselves from doing the things that we know we need to do just because they're imperfect. It's ridiculous. I work with a ton of photographers and creative entrepreneurs that are primarily service-based, like aestheticians and wedding professionals. And I even have some students that are chocolatiers. And most of them are not brand new, but they have a few years under their belts, and they're starting to learn that maybe they can't do it all the time. And I've heard several of my students tell me that they don't really need a full contract because they're not charging that much. And they're just not big enough to really need something legal in place. I would love to hear your thoughts on this. Is there really like a level that you need a contract at, or is a contract a must-have for anyone in business?
I mean, well, first of all, we have to consider that life happens. Then we also have to consider that some clients just be crazy. So
Oh my gosh, yes.
here's my thing when it comes to contracts is I was thinking about this on my run this morning. So I'm glad you asked this, is that they are more than just legal protection. They convey professionalism. Like they build up the confidence in the client, especially if you're in the wedding industry. You're not going to be that one vendor that is offering the contract. In fact, if you don't offer one, you're probably going to be the only vendor that's not. And,
Yes.
the more money, obviously, you start charging, people, I think, believe there's more liability, but I think the majority of problems actually come from when you're in your growing stages. So when
Mhm.
you're charging less. And so you should have a contract and have all the legal protection from the very beginning. And I'll tell you what, I'm saying this from the standpoint of not just because I'm an attorney, I am, but because I am a mom and a wife and a dog mom, and I want to work on my businesses and I want to go out with my friends and I don't want to be having to deal with the legal icky, right? And
Yes.
so contracts can build up that confidence, they set the expectations, and they can honestly reduce problems because you're putting everything into one place. Like there's no miscommunication on who was supposed to receive what, when payments were going to be made. So to answer your question in my long-winded fashion, you should have it from the very beginning. But when I first started out, I get it. I didn't have the money to invest in this sort of stuff. So I would make it a to-do to be one of the very first things that you can get done for you.
Yes.
But I get it. You just might not have the money for that. I had posted a story on my Instagram, and I could copy and paste this amongst 15 different clients I see a year that this happens to, is they'll inquire and they'll say, okay, I want a contract. And we'll tell them how much it's going to be. And let's say it's like 400, $500. And they go, no, we're good. Inevitably, within a year, they're back in the inbox because they had a problem. And
Yes.
I've had to go to court for clients who didn't want to spend the couple $100 to get a contract up front, wrote their own, ended up not because they did anything. And I'm glad you brought this up. See, Rachel's rants. I told you. It doesn't matter relatively. No, it does matter if you're going to go out and say, I'm not going to do anything bad. I know that. You're not going to just not deliver something to the client or just not take the shot or whatever it is. But
Mhm.
here's the thing. A lot of people don't understand is that if a client has a problem and they pull you into court, you still have to spend the time, money, and energy to go into court to prove that you didn't do X, Y, and Z.
Yes.
And contracts can help support you financially, so that's not a burden. And, this one client that I was giving the example of, a couple $100, didn't want to pay for it, wrote his own, ended up spending $15,000
Oh my
to
gosh.
defend it and everything. And then in the end, still spent the couple $100 to get me to fix the contract. And the reason it costs so much, I don't really want to go necessarily into specific contracts unless you want to. But one of the key things is, like, in the United States, there's this idea from TV that if you go to court and you win, the losing party pays your attorney's fees.
No.
It doesn't happen that way. So to answer your question on contracts, this is one of the key things of why I say get it as soon as possible, not just the professionalism, not just the setting expectations and all that, but getting attorney's fees in writing. Because there's only two major ways, and contracts is one of them, that if you have to go into court, even if you've done everything right, you win, you don't get attorney's fees unless it was contracted to.
Yes. And so much of my contract now, because I've specialized in boudoir for 11 years now, and so much of my contract now has come from past issues as well.
No, and honestly, I'm so glad you said that, because I think that's one of the big things here too, is contracts are living, breathing documents. Like,
Mhm.
it's not a one-time check the box and never come back to it. As you start adding on more products and services, as you start charging more, or problems, like you said, you want to try to contemplate. Now, we can't put everything in there, but if you just pay attention and stay on top of it, you can have a pretty solid document, and it doesn't have to be that expensive.
Yes, and it helps clients understand too. Like one of the parts in my contract is that if you don't like your hair and makeup, you need to say something.
Mm-hmm.
And that helps them understand that they have a responsibility in this as well, because we're not going to go back afterwards and reshoot because you didn't say something now.
Mm-hmm. We could go into the whole conversation about, the psychology of women and speaking up and how we're supposed to be
Yes,
nice, but it can give them the confidence to say if there's a problem.
absolutely. Give them the power. They understand that it's not only their responsibility, but their privilege. And it's something that we want them to feel completely empowered to say something.
Agreed. I like that.
What if you didn't have to worry about writing emails to your list for the next 6 months and maybe even a year? Yes, it's true. It's finally here. My students have been asking me for this for years, and I have heard you, and these templates are finally available. Engaging Emails Done is a quick workshop and template bundle to help you harness the power of email marketing to grow your business. You can set it and forget it and actually book more clients. If you're like, Brooke, I am so in. Where do I grab these? Head on over to businessstraightedup.com/emailsdone to grab this special limited bundle. If you want to hear a little more, I feel you. I like details too. These templates are designed to be done for you to set up several months of emails in just an hour. Plus, I've recorded several how-to videos to walk you through the technical steps for several different email service providers if you're not sure how to customize and schedule them. Engaging Emails Done has not only a quickie email marketing 101 how-to if you're starting from scratch, but it includes a minimum of 12 email templates that you can schedule ahead of time to take something off of that never-ending to-do list so you can focus on what you love most. Side note, I did say a minimum of 12 because I keep thinking of things to add, so you might even get more than 12. These are brand new. I've never offered something like this before. So grab your email templates plus email marketing 101 plus tech tutorials before the price goes up. Grab these templates, tutorials, and help all at businessstraightedup.com/emailsdone. Again, that's businessstraightedup.com/emailsdone. I love it. So let's talk about websites, because website strategy is something that I teach and I've talked with my students about. We go through the must-have pages as far as like home and about and all that good stuff, but we also talk about the must-have pages based on legal requirements, things like terms of use and privacy policy and things like that. What are some of the must-have pages for a business owner's website and why do they need them?
Yeah, so you just hit really on the head is website terms and your privacy policy. And they often are intertwined, but they do have two distinct purposes. So website terms are going to outline the relationship between you and visitors of your site. And I say visitors because it doesn't necessarily have to be someone that submits to the contact form. They're just merely entering into your space on the web. And then you have privacy policy, which is going to control and inform these visitors. So these are probably going to be visitors that take some sort of action, what you're doing with their personal information. So whether they submit their contact forms, sign up for your newsletter list, or even now with so many pixels and tracking that's online, letting them know what information you're gathering that way and how you're going to utilize it. Out of the two, the most important one to me is the privacy policy. Consumer protection, especially when it comes to private information, is a huge thing that's going on. A couple of years ago, European Union came out with what's called GDPR. And the reason I'm bringing this up to y'all, even if you're in the US, is it's coming here. It's headed. And I've always drafted my privacy policy to be pretty extensive because I think it's good as business people. We should be transparent anyways, telling them if you're going to sell their information or not, what you're going to do with it, how you're going to safeguard it, yada, yada. But it is already coming. California this last year in 2020 has instituted a lot more stricter, and some states are starting to require privacy policies. So while neither of these documents or pages, they're documents you copy and paste and put them into pages on your website and stick them in the footer, while they may not be, the website terms may not be legally required, a lot of the same reasons like we talked about before. It's a contract, so have that. But the privacy policy, so many states are adopting it. It's good business anyways, but definitely see if you have to have one and then abide by it. That's really important.
What does that look like if you want to sell your business later?
Well, I'm glad you asked. So you kind of teed it up for me to circle back around a little bit to some legal protection and discussion of assets. Many times, and I definitely see this with creatives, and I'm pointing at myself because I was one of the ones in the beginning, so I'm not shaming anybody. But oftentimes, especially with creatives, I find that they just put up their Facebook page or a website and they don't do any legal steps to set up. So they don't create an LLC or a corporation. So everything is tied to you personally, which has its own liability issues.
Yes.
But from a asset standpoint, there's no bucket. And what I mean by that is when you create an LLC or a corporation, it's taking your business assets, putting it in a bucket separate from you, you personally, as well as the liability, so that, and visualize this, if you have a problem, let's say a client has an issue with you and they come along, the only bucket they can pick up is the business bucket and they can't touch your personal stuff. But
Yes.
with that too, is we have to put what you're asking, what do you do if you want to sell the business later? All of our assets in our business, not just financial, otherwise, need to be in that bucket. Our marketing assets, the photography, the video, our website text, like what you're talking about, our client list, all of this information needs to be tied into that bucket. And what is the mechanism by what you do it? The privacy policy and website terms, because you're going to write it. It's one of the very first things on a contract. It's saying, who is this contract with? I mean, go on to Amazon or Walmart, any of these websites, scroll to their bottom and take a look at their privacy policy. Don't copy and paste it. Theirs is a bit more expensive than you need.
Yes.
But take a look that one of the very first things it's going to talk about is their business name, their business structure. That's because they're putting the bucket out and then they're showing you where your personal information is going to go.
Yes. And it's so important for us to understand that. I know the whole LLC conversation is something completely different, but so many, especially like you said, creatives just put up a website and, hey, I'm in business now. And it doesn't really work that way.
Well, and and I get it. Like I've been there you're like, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to make it. I don't have like for me, I didn't have 2 nickels to rub together when I first started. I waited tables in the evenings, reinvested, sold as much as I could in the house till my husband started like hiding his stuff because I was selling everything. But you definitely want to put that, like we talked about contracts getting on your to-do list. That's another one you really want to get on your to-do list to set yourself up for liability protection. And as well as what you mentioned, what if you want to sell your business? Because that's another part of this. And we could probably do a whole episode on just an exit plan in business. Because the reality is, as much as I love this, I'm not going to be doing this when I'm 80 or 90.
Right. And that's something that I didn't really consider. Like my brand is entirely under my name. And while I don't regret that, now that I'm working on other things, it makes it a little more difficult. So we have to think of, the future. Are you still going to be shooting weddings when you're 82? I don't think so.
There are ways to do a transition. And one of the things that I did, like with the Law Talk, was I started as Rachel Brenke and was putting all of like the photography legal stuff on there when I was in law school. Once I graduated, it is exactly what you were saying. I was like, okay, long term, I'm not going to be doing this forever. So I would love to one day, don't run around rumor mill, I'm not selling it now, but one day I want to be able to sell the Law Talk or pass it on. And I've started phasing myself out a little bit. I'm still prominent, but I went from solely me to more of packaged with other industry leaders and other voices and faces so that it is not so contingent. It could live on without me.
Yes. And it's so funny to me that our industry kind of looks down on that, right? Like if photographers move into another space of teaching or coaching or consulting, man, they get attacked. Photographers can be mean.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because that has been something I've been mulling over. Why is that? Because it's so logical, like in the legal field. I'm in all these lawyers groups, and when they decide to move into like coaching or teaching, they cheer for one another. And I'm like, in photographers groups, you'd be skewered.
Oh my gosh. Yes. And you think about any other industry, like even athletes, sports, like when they stop playing, what do most of them do? Either news or coaching. It's so normal everywhere else.
Or there's even coaches like football coaches, professional football coaches who never played football a day in their lives.
Yes. Yes. But our industry just goes after these people and wants to burn them at the stake. It's amazing to me.
I think that passion is misguided, but I think it's because we have such a passion and want for this industry and recognize the need and the importance. So I think the wires get a little crossed when you get there, but I like to believe that everyone starts out with a good intention feeling for just wanting to preserve and protect our industry.
Yes, absolutely. I know that you have worked on so many businesses personally for you, but I also know that you see a lot of your students move through the growth of their own businesses. What are 3 major mistakes that you're seeing business owners make in their own businesses, and what can they do to correct those mistakes?
I am so glad you asked that. Before we got on here, I was actually updating our insider membership page on the Law Talk. And that was
Oh,
one of the things I was making a list of, like, the top issues that I see. I mean, obviously, legal issues are one of the big things. I already gave you the example of, like, not using contracts. You can have miscommunications, which can, lead to a bad client experience, no referrals coming out of that one, maybe a loss of sales, as well as having to pay out if you go to court or something. The other things I see is, when we kind of touched on this earlier, when we're getting into the marketing and messaging aspect of things, you get into this fear. And I think, raising my hand, creatives also get even more of this fear. I think just because we're more sensitive in that side of the brain of, I don't want to niche down. I don't want to speak specifically to one person because I'm afraid to
yes.
alienate specific clients. And that's a second huge one. And it's funny because I have even been looking at mine. I try to routinely look at, am I talking to who I want to talk to? Am I attracting who I want? And because I always want to make sure that my messaging's on point so I can serve those who my products and services are actually for, which I think is a really good point. And I really didn't intend that when you first asked me this question, but if not only do you want to clean up your marketing messaging to attract the right people, because that'll make you happier, but you can also serve them better. You're going to have less problems. You're going to have people that are more appreciative. You're going to have more referrals, return type clients. So marketing messaging is the second one. Third, probably just business strategy, which kind of overlaps a bit with the marketing messaging, but I think it's this whole, my hands have to do everything. Like, my brand has to be my name. I have to respond to every email because or else the clients won't be happy if it's not me. It's this fallacy of busyness equals business, and that's not true.
So not true. It is not a badge of honor. That is for damn sure.
And you know what? If you want to wear that badge, then you're going to be wearing it at 2 a.m. while you're eating bonbons, watching TV, and stressed out about, like, your website, etc. And you're not going to have a happy life.
Yeah, it'll never end.
No one's even going to see that badge.
Right? Yeah, the work never ends unless you end it yourself and say, you know what, someone else can take care of this for me. It's so funny. Actually, my next question that I had written down, excuse me, is I see so many business owners afraid to niche down because they think that they're narrowing their field of available clients. So what advice would you have for someone that's like, no, I'm going to talk to everyone. Or maybe I want to shoot 4 different types of photography or work with 4 different types of brides.
I don't think there is a negative of doing that, so long as, and I've kind of done this. If you look at my different legal niche sites that I have one for photographers, I have one for fitness professionals, bloggers, and podcasters. You can't tackle it all at one time. So you have to get very clear in your messaging and identify what we said earlier, simplify the message and simplify the products and services that you're going to put out there to attract these people. I think once you do it really well with one type, then you can work on the others. But I think if you're trying to talk to so many because you're afraid of alienating, guess what? You're going to alienate everyone. You're not going to be able to speak to anyone specifically. Let me give an example. Of myself. I mentioned in my story, I was just Rachel Brenke. And then when I graduated, I changed it to the Law Talk. Well, one of the things, like we mentioned, was because one day I want to sell it. But I also knew, because a lot of lawyers about my age were like us young whippersnappers are coming out of law school and they're building these online businesses. And I was like, I have to be different from them. So I looked to see where in my past, because I was still working as a photographer and had done it all through law school, I was like, you know what? I already know the things in this industry. I already know here's who I can serve. And so now, whether it's a photographer who needs me specifically, or just I always get tagged for interviews on how to use top narrowly, to a specific type niche.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because I sat down and I went, okay, who is the person I want to help? And we kind of mentioned this earlier in the episode. Someone very like me. More often than not, it's going to be someone that is either working a full-time corporate job and either wants a side hustle or wants to go full into entrepreneurship. She likes to drink Starbucks. She likes to have a couple cups of coffee in the morning. She's this and that. And I get so specific. So now when I sit and write my website copy or my social media post, it's not a question of what I'm going to write. Really,
Yes.
The content and knowledge is up here. I just have to put it through the filter of who I'm talking to. And I just visualize that person.
Yes, and that's so important. So many of my students ask me about multiple websites, primarily for boudoir versus wedding versus seniors or whatever. And I always tell them you can, but you're going to be diluting a lot of your messaging when you're trying to speak to everyone. And it's a lot of work.
Yeah, I sat back the last few weeks because I was being pinged for an interview on niching down and simplifying and all this kind of stuff. And I realized you could do it all on one website.
Mhm.
I specifically broke mine out because I have an end goal of selling them off eventually, not now, maybe 20, 30 years. But I think the key to it is about simplify and know who you're talking to. Like if you want to offer different types, you can. But think of it this way. If we do like one website, we don't want to have a drop down of 15 different things that you quote unquote specialize in. Like pick one or two and then use very specific landing pages, right? If you're absolutely hell bent
Yes.
on having multiple niches. But seriously though, I would just get very specific on one and get very successful with one before, because then guess what? You already have the processes and everything hammered out, copy and paste it over, change the messaging, done.
Absolutely. And if it's a different genre entirely, chances are you can reach out to your existing clients too.
You know what's funny is I don't photograph families at all anymore. Kids don't
Mhm.
like me, even though I have 5. They don't really like me. I will photograph families, but they're only those that I do like commercial headshots or marketing photographs for, and I
Mhm.
only market to them. And so you'll never see family pictures hardly, unless you're like on one of my personal like friends page, you'll hardly ever see the family photos because I don't want that. I'm not
Me
looking to do
too.
that at all.
Yes. Me too. Families are not my favorite, but it's funny. Anytime one of my clients goes, "Do you do families?" I will be completely blunt and say, "Only for people I really like you."
Yep. Yep.
And then they feel all special and all warm inside. And then we figure it out. But I'm all about making my life easier, and things that don't make my life easier have to go.
Yep. 100%. Which, honestly sounds like such a easy thing, but like the theme we've kind of talked about is you're fighting against this fear, the know-how or what you don't know how. And I just have to constantly remind myself on the messaging side, who am I talking to? On the
Yes.
fear side of I am going to reach more people. I kind of think of it this way. I'm standing in a room and there's all these other people in the room, like say all these other lawyers just screaming out there. No one's going to hear me. But if I come and walk right up to you, look you in the face and go, hey, I got photography contracts, you're going to
Right?
hear me. But you're not going to hear me if I'm yelling, trying to get everyone's attention.
Like everyone else's.
Pretty much.
Oh my gosh, that's so true. I hammer your ideal client like over and over again. When I started the podcast, I made that episode 1 because I knew that I would
Mm-hmm.
reference it over and over and over again
Mm-hmm.
so that I knew I would remember.
Yeah, no, and it's the thing is, even now when I sit to go write a social media post, I always think the formula: client avatar plus unique selling proposition. Okay, now what am I trying to teach? Well, it has to fit in that formula.
Yes, absolutely. It's so crazy important. And I always share with my students too that it's not always going to be like what kind of car does someone drive? Where do they shop? It's going to come down to what are they facing in their lives? What are they afraid
Mhm.
of right now? What can you help with? Where can you offer to serve them in some way?
Yep, agreed.
Love, 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 love. If you could sit down with a business owner who's not necessarily brand new, but wants to scale and make a sustainable living doing what she loves without working herself into the ground or never seeing her family, what would you most want to share with her?
We've kind of already tackled the messaging aspect. That's
Hmm.
majority of the battle, I think. The other
Yes.
side of it is, well, messaging plus simplifying. And then the biggest thing after that would be growing a team. Growing a team and asking yourself, do my fingers have to be touching the buttons for X? And if the answer is no, you either need to find a way to automate it and or get a team member.
Yes. And actually, I told you a little bit before we hit record that I have so many questions. And you know what? That's like the perfect segue into my extra questions. So we're going there.
But it is
I,
true because
it
that's one of the things
is.
I look back when I reverse engineered like this year is like how was I able to have such like family tragedy as well as pandemic and still be able to come out relatively unscathed like professionally is because I
Hmm.
built a bomb ass team and I'm not the best
Yes.
manager. I suck at managing, but they give me grace. I'm still learning and they're just amazing.
So, knowing that, I know you and I both are firmly in can't build a team, hire
Mhm.
someone, outsource. What are some tips that you can give to someone who knows that she needs to start outsourcing, but she's afraid to?
Well, the first thing that I would do is take a piece of paper, and
Hmm.
we kind of have to do this as attorneys because of the whole billable hours thing, but I want you to walk around for like a whole week. Have that piece of paper and pen. I guess you could put it on your notepad on your phone and write down what you do during the entire day. Because you're going to identify repeated actions that you're doing that can be automated. You're going to,
Hmm.
that you don't need your hands either. You're going to identify where you're sucking your life away on like social media. That's not actually an income producing activity. But you're also going to identify some tasks in there that you don't necessarily like, or you're not that good at, or you
Hmm.
simply don't have to be doing. And that's where you want to go, okay, what is it? And when I did this my own exercise. And I routinely do this just to make sure that I haven't had any like time creep into other areas. I dipped my toe in by hiring someone to help clean my house because I realized I
Oh my
hated it. It
gosh.
took me too long. I could make more money building my business than I could cleaning the toilets. Plus, I suck at it. So that's where
Oh,
I started. And it was a good way to dip my toe in. And then incrementally, it was that list. I look at it. And then I would start with like independent contractors with a couple of tasks and then built my way up.
how life-changing is it to get help in that area?
In
Cleaning
the
your
cleaning
house.
portion,
Oh my gosh.
I always hate to be like, well, my cleaning ladies are coming because I sound like a rich snob. But then when I say I could pay her $200 that takes her like 7 hours to clean my house, or well, it doesn't take her 7 hours, or I could take on 7 clients in that time at 1 hour each, billing at,
Yep.
450 whatever an hour. What am I going to make
Yep.
more money at?
Exactly. When you have children, is your house ever really clean?
No.
Like when you clean one room and then you move to the next room, your children come along behind you like a tornado and just destroy what you actually just cleaned. And so many moms get so frustrated with that. And my cleaners, I call them my helpers because I absolutely love when they come. I may or may not rub my hand on the counter just to feel the one time that it's clean.
Well, it's funny. Before we got on here, I ran downstairs to get a drink and came back up. And I just stopped and I was like, what the fuck happened in here today? Like before I went to my office, it's just a hot mess. My kids are old enough now, though, that they know they need to be cleaning up before I get out of my office for the day. But I just was like, what are you people doing? You're throwing SpaghettiOs against the ceiling? Not
Oh
really.
my
That's
gosh.
what it felt like.
But I'm sure they would if they thought that it would be okay.
And so they wouldn't get busted. Yeah, they probably would.
So, kind of going back to kind of the reflection and looking at the things that you do, you say you do this often. How often do you do that?
On the like analytics side of things and checking up like my marketing plan and all of that, I typically do a good read of that at the beginning of every month to see if I have to adjust messaging or fine tuning of ads and that sort of thing. As far as bigger picture, I do more in depth every quarterly. And it also is going to depend. I try to stay in tune with if I'm just feeling frustrated about something. Like
Mhm.
this one page on my website was driving me crazy. And I normally would have waited, given it 30 days or whatever, so I could have enough analytics before I changed it. It was
Mhm.
just gnawing the heck out of me today. So I was like, I have to work on it. I try to be pretty rigid with my schedule in that trying to protect my time so I can do things like this. And I think that's one of the things that entrepreneurs by default already have like this passion, excitement. Creatives, we're even
Mhm.
worse. Like we're one track mind. We got to fix that
Yes.
web page. We got to fix that marketing brochure. So as long as you don't let it suck it yourself into you, I don't think you have to be so rigid with when you reevaluate stuff.
Definitely. I need to, it's funny, I evaluate marketing efforts weekly, but when it
Mhm.
comes to like outsourcing and looking at things, I probably do it once a year. I need to do it more often, I think.
Oh yeah. Well, I kind of do it also of a pain point. If I'm starting to hate a task, there's a
Hmm.
reason. I'm either not good at it and or I just don't like it and need somebody to do it.
Are there any things that you don't like, but you feel like you can't outsource? Like for me, it's Instagram. I don't love Instagram, but I feel like when I am the one behind it, it does so much better than when someone else does it.
That was the song of my people this morning. I took it back over, and not that my team wasn't doing a good job. And
Yes.
I have to sit tonight and evaluate, am I just being a control freak or is it really better? But one of the core tenets that I try to go by with that question of, do my fingers have to touch this? I'm the content creator. I'm
Yes.
the one that people are buying. I'm the one that people are engaging with. So in that situation, I don't dislike social. It's just sometimes can be a lot. It's definitely not one that I feel like, I mean, you can batch process, you can auto post, but you
Mhm.
still really have to stay on top of it. So mine in that vein is more of a mindset shift of, you are the strategist in the mind and the talent here. So you're going to have to offload other things to have time for this. And social
Yes.
media is that.
Yes, definitely. I know that so many of my students don't understand that you can hire someone for just a couple of hours a week. It doesn't have to be this long-term full-time position. How many do you have on your team right now?
I have 2 full-time and then 3 part-time.
And your part-time, is it like a few hours a week or is it, what is it, 20 to 30, I think is.
Yeah, it's roughly between 15 to 20 for the part-time folks.
Mhm.
And that's just for one of the businesses. For the law firm, we're all full-time, but yeah, it's pretty much 15 to 20 for part-time. And then over that is upwards of 40. I do have an integrator who works more than 40, but that's her choice.
Oh,
I don't make her.
man. Man, that is my next kind of jump. I need one of those so much.
They're amazing.
Are they all virtual or in person?
All virtual.
Isn't that amazing? How many creatives think that they have to have someone right next to them?
A
I have
lot.
that conversation all the time where photographers are like, no, I really need to have someone with me. I said, why? Are they shooting? No.
Sometimes it might be feel like a safety blanket thing, or
Hmm.
just they just want companionship. And I can understand that too. Like, I know when we do go to the law firm office, we still all work virtually, but we end up talking more about personal stuff. So I think it's just more like a
Yes.
craving for connection and that security versus actually providing we're more productive when we're not together.
Yes. Well, and working by yourself is extremely isolating.
Mm-hmm.
So you really have to be intentional about setting up time where you can physically either in person or video chat or whatever, depending on the level of lockdown.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you have to be very intentional.
Well, and I think that's one of the things that I want to take the mystery away from is, honestly, it doesn't matter how long you do this. It doesn't matter how successful you become. You still have to be very intentional. I mean, you've kind of heard me say it. Every time I go to write a social media post, I run through the formula. Like, you have to be very intentional, because just because you've built an awesome brand doesn't mean that it's going to stay awesome if you just back off. Like, you can coast, but you can't completely get off the gas.
Yes. And it's important for us to remember that, especially right now in the pandemic, too. So many people just backed off completely. I know
Mm-hmm.
I kind of did because I was just in shock. I was like, what the heck is going on? And then, regroup and came back over to it. But it's really hard not to do that when we face things in our own lives.
And that's one of the things that I saw, the fruits and the dividends, like I was saying earlier, not just like financially and being able to be present with my kids. I was able to check out because of the family tragedy that we had at the beginning of the year. And I essentially was checked out for a couple of months, and my team stepped in and they were able to at least maintain, if not
Yes.
grow it even without me.
What an amazing feeling. And knowing that you can take time off too.
Mm.
Like if you choose to do so, you can go on vacation for 2 weeks and your business is not going to stall and your revenue doesn't stop.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Which is especially important if you're employing people.
Oh my gosh, yes. I remember being so scared when I brought on my first team member, like I have to make enough to cover her salary.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's why it's good to start with like independent contractors, dip your toe in of like projects and all this, and watch your financials and make sure you understand, even if I'm not a big fan of keeping the old financials in order and all of that. So I have a CPA that helps me do the reporting and all of that.
Hmm.
But there are some that I check daily just to make sure that we're on track, and you have to stay on top of it, even if you don't like it.
Yes, it is something I do not love for sure, but I have my bookkeeper and my CPA, and they help me so much. And I
Mhm.
know that it's been such a blessing to have them.
I love them.
Thank you so much for being here today, Rachel. Where can listeners find out more about what you do, connect with you, get some awesome contracts?
Yeah. So photographers, you can go straight to thelawtog.com or else rachelbrenke.com for everyone else. I'm also Rachel Brenke on all the socials. And so you find me on there. I have a lot more fun like interacting and looking at other people's stuff than creating my own, but I do put out a decent amount of content. You might catch some of my reels because I'm really trying to like be with the cool kids. So we'll see.
What do you even, I struggle. I'm like, I don't know what to talk about in Reels. I am not a very exciting person, guys.
Not true. You are. It's educational. You can just take something that would have been a post that you would have given 3 or 4 tips in and just you got to condense it and then put it in the video.
Interesting. Aren't they supposed to be like 15 seconds long though?
I think 30 is the max. I do definitely prefer TikTok, but that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting to see where that goes.
We'll see. What I've been doing, I've been recording reels, saving them, and then taking them over to TikTok.
Oh, really? I kind of do it the other way around because I like the TikTok sparkle hair thing.
Oh yeah. I like the eyeliner and the eyelashes on.
Yes. You're like, oh, look, I put on makeup. Just kidding. Oh my gosh. To all of the listeners and business owners that have joined us, thank you so much for listening today. I am truly honored that you pressed play and spent this time with Rachel and I. If you are someone that wants to help other people and you know someone who can use this information, maybe they need the information that you just heard, please forward this episode over to them. And if you are thinking, wow, Brooke, Rachel, this content was amazing, how can I thank you? I have a way you can thank me. If you can head on over to iTunes and leave a review, I would so appreciate that. I know it seems small, takes a couple of minutes, but those reviews help me to know exactly how I can serve you and what I can help you with. Plus, it helps us get amazing guests like Rachel. So hit pause now, leave a review. And if you screenshot your review before hitting submit and send it over to hello@businessstraightup.com, I will send you a free gift. Please leave those reviews so that we can continue kicking ass with great content every week. Thank you so much for your time, Rachel. I'm so glad we could connect today.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
And thank you to all my listeners. I want to know, what is something that you are having trouble with? Maybe it's legal and you're like, I need a contract for this. Let me know. Head on over to the Business Straight Up community and let me know. Maybe I can point you over to Rachel's website. I know I have several contracts from her. She is such an amazing resource. It's time to start stepping into the CEO role of your business to address all of the challenges that you face and embrace these amazing resources and people that can help you. I can't wait to see what you do with your business. You do have the power to impact the world, even if it's just small bits at a time. I can't wait to see what you do with it. Have an amazing rest of your day. Thank you so much for listening to Business Straight Up. I'm so glad that you could join us today. Check out the show notes for this and all of the episodes at businessstraightupodcast.com. And I can't wait to talk with you again. Have a great day.